Namaskar, my dear friends. Suromurchhana Inc., our organization, has been celebrating birth centenary of my Guruji, legendary maestro, late Pandit A. Kanan, all throughout the year 2020. And this year, we are going to end the celebration with a grand festival featuring all great masters of Indian classical music and young talents, was all superb talents of Indian classical music. And we are proud to present them in front of you. And I feel it is worth listening to listen to these great masters and the young talents from the comfort of your house. Today we have musicians, two wonderful musicians, one great maestro and his son, which is a perfect example of Guru Shishya Parampara that we believe in Indian classical music. We have with us none other than Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji, who is the recipient of Sangeet Natak Akademi Award, a very prestigious award from the government of India. And we are at Suromurchhana. Our humble pranam to you for being with us and for your participation in our festival. And we have with
Thank
our
you.
the young maestro, uh, Ishaan Ghosh. Thank you, Nandala and Ishaan Bhai, for being with us
Thank you
today.
so much. It's an honor.
So,
We are really privileged that you thought of us for this centenary celebration of the great legend Pandit A. Kanan. And we feel blessed to be part of it.
thank you so much. Actually, when we were thinking about the celebration, actually, because I traveled with my Guruji to Bombay a lot of times, I used to travel, and Guruji once used to meet him also. So in that way, they had a great friendship between them. So that's why I think
Yes,
you are so presenting you in our way will be a great offering to my Guruji. So that's why I requested you to play for the concert.
thank you. Pleasure
And
is
thanks for
ours.
accepting that. And so my first question to you will be like, how did you your learning process with you? It's a great tradition that you have a great lineage. And how, Nandada, you just came into the field of music? I know there's a lot of music there, but sitar, gayan, vocal, and tabla, all going simultaneously side by side. It's like like it's something we don't think of.
Well, well, actually, um, I feel blessed that I could receive uh, a kind of all-round talim training in Hindustani music, and being born in a family of musicians and being a hereditary musician, it's as natural as fish taking to water. And so it shouldn't be a matter of surprise that someone like me, for example, born in a musician's family, should be um, at ease with the learning of music since absolutely since infancy. Uh, so I, it happens, I'm sure, with all musicians' families that a child, by the time he's 1.5 or 2, already shows signs of his musical abilities. The indications start showing. So, well, that is how it happened, and probably my uh, as a child, I just sang and played whatever my little fingers could on the tabla. But by the time I was 3, I think I started my getting my formal training in both tabla and vocal music. And so it just happened that there was a special program of talented children on All India Radio when I was 4 years old, and I was able to broadcast a tabla solo recital. Um, so, this shouldn't be surprising, but I feel that along with a normal routine which a child undergoes, from starting from nursery and play school and a regular primary school. So alongside that, my musical training at home was kind of a continuous thing and a natural thing to happen, because the atmosphere at home was constantly very charged because of the presence of such a great figure like my father, Pandit Nikhil Ghosh, who generally people know as a great tabla maestro and guru, but who was also a very all-round musician. He was a fine vocalist of a very high order. And with him being busy either with concerts or constantly practicing at home or teaching others, uh, all these started entering my system as a child. And along with the continuous training, my father also took care that early exposure
Hmm.
could be risky, can have negative effects. And so it was very controlled. So I started playing in competitions as a child,
Hmm.
as a young boy, both vocal and tabla, and bringing home prizes and so on. This was very natural also. It was kind of routine. But my serious uh, performance in a concert was, it started at the age of 12.
Wow.
And as a soloist. And at 13, for the first time, I accompanied a senior musician, Pandit Manilal Na,
Acha.
the great sitar player, Vishnupur Gharana. So I was 13 when I accompanied him. And then the wheels started rolling.
Hmm.
So by the time I was 16, I started playing quite a few concerts here and there. And with regard to sitar, as compared to tabla and vocal music, I started that later, because sitar is quite a large instrument. So it was around the age of 11 or 12 that I started playing the sitar also. I took a fascination for it. There were sitars at home. And when my father saw that I was serious about it, he gave me a lot of talim, because my grandfather was a very learned sitar player. And my father had a very in-depth knowledge of sitar repertoire and techniques. So my talim started with sitar also around the age of 11 or 12. Then I was, well, not only concerts in India, but then when I was 18, my father decided to take me along on his world tour to Europe and North America. So that was in 1974. For the first time, I traveled extensively with him, myself and my younger brother, the Sarangi maestro, late Dhruba Ghosh. We lost him just 3 years ago. He was a wonderful Sarangi player and a vocalist also. He was very gifted as a tabla player also. Not many know about that. But he on the Sarangi and me on sitar, and my father obviously was the leader of the group as a tabla player. And we had, on the very first tour, we really had a very impressive number of concerts, more than 40 concerts on that trip across Europe and North America. And that started. Then, of course, with my father, I was able to travel for 11 years around the world,
Hmm.
me and my brother. So, this is how my training and concert performances began. But I'll also tell you that in the growing stages at home, there were great musicians who visited my father. They were friends. So
I was coming
people
to that
like,
question. I was coming to that question because we heard that Ustad Ahmed and Thirakwa lived with you people are for ten long years.
Oh,
And
yes. He was,
I heard that you told that he made you do that haddi to riyaz. You told in an interview, I heard you the haddi to riyaz. So the little bit about that, because it's
sure,
people
sure.
need to know, how much, how Nayan Ghosh is made, because was born, because this is the thing that makes you a musician. We as a student need to know from you how was the practice and how difficult it was, the situation it was for you.
Well, Thirakwa Khan Sahab started coming and staying at our home by the time I was around 10 years old. And then he stayed almost a decade. But in the meantime, uh, closely watching my father's friends like Ustad Vilayat Khan Sahab, Nikhil Banerjee, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Ravi Shankar ji, Amir Khan Sahab, very closely, watching them. I was even fortunate to sit on the lap of Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab and
Huh.
get his blessing also. And so seeing all these great masters, Omkar Nath Thakur ji, and many more, uh, that was all part of my growing years. And my father's earlier previous Guru, Ustad Amir Hussain Khan Sahab and Gyan Prakash Ghosh ji, Gurudev Gyan Prakash Ghosh, they were regular visitors to our home, or we visiting them. And Thirakwa Khan Sahab's staying in our home was a huge um, event in my life, because by that by that time my father was already an established maestro. And uh, it's a long story, but just cutting it short, my father was a very established maestro, performing around and with everyone, and bumping into Ustad Ahmed Khan Thirakwa several times at various concerts. And that was when Thirakwa Khan Sahab expressed his desire to teach my father. And he said, there are a beautiful sentence. He said, तुम्हारे हाथ में बुजुर्गों की निशानी है, तुम्हारे हाथ में बुजुर्गों की निशानी है, मेरे पास ऐसा ऐसा तबला है जो मैंने किसी को बतलाया नहीं, और वो तुमको बतलाना चाहता हूँ, तुमको देख के जाना चाहता हूँ मैं.
क्या बात.
He was
Amazing.
uh, he was almost at the end of his 80s at that time. And he said, before anything happens to me, I want to teach you all these things, because you will be the right person to receive them. And so that their talim was not just give and take of lessons. They used to sit for hours together. They would start uh, with two pairs facing each other around 11 or 12 in the night, and go until 3, 4, 5, sometimes even up to 6 in the morning. And sometimes it was not just giving of compositions, but trying to explore the minds of the great masters of the past, trying to explore the composer's thought process. And so they were subjects which, when they spoke or when they chatted, it's something like you see two persons on two mountain peaks communicating with one another, but you are on the ground, you really can't understand what's happening at that height. So it was uh, that level of discussion. However, I was very lucky to be a witness to all those talim sessions of my father. Plus, my Thirakwa Khan Sahab noted, kind of noticed that this little boy also showing signs of talent. So he took me, and when my father was busy in the daytime with other projects and building the institution and so on, he would spend time with me and tell me, take out a pair of tabla. And then we used to sit face to face. And he used to make me practice, on holidays, 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening. And on school days, just evening 4 hours. But that was quite an experience, because I used to practice out of joy, out of, you can say, there was a constant state of being in music. So there was inspiration all the time. But working on something, on an exercise or a phrase for several hours, to the point of, almost bone breaking practice, that is what he made me experience. That was something very important, because I was playing out of talent and joy, but as a discipline, playing one thing hundreds of times,
Hmm.
till almost you feel your hand is coming apart. That was a great experience that he made me go through. But most interestingly, he was himself in his early 90s, and he was also practicing those 8 hours with me. So that is something phenomenal. And seeing such a great musician, not just a tabla player, he was a complete musician, you know, and all the time, anybody being around would be inspired. I'll give you a small example. He would come back from a concert, change into home dress, and while the food was being warmed at night for dinner, he would open the tabla case and take the tablas out, and he would practice again immediately after coming back from a concert. Normally, people take 1 or 2 days of break after a big concert. You know, for him, it was such a passion. His He was so passionate about constantly touching the tabla. Even in the morning when he woke up, his mattress was on the floor,
Hmm.
and next to the mattress was the pair of tablas. So the first thing, he would get up, sit up after waking up, open the tabla covers, and just play a couple of bowls, and then shut it, and then go ahead, for the other morning duties. So these things constantly inspired me. I have also seen another inspiring thing. When he was even in his deep sleep, he would sometimes be reciting some beautiful composition, either a tabla or a vocal khayal or a thumri, in his sleep, in his deep sleep, in between the snoring sessions. He would be singing or reciting tabla bowls, and sometimes his fingers would move. He would rest his hands on the head, and he would be playing in his deep sleep. So
Actually,
these are,
one documentary
uh,
is there of Thirakwa Khasa where we see that he's sleeping and playing like that. Yeah.
what I mean, these are great things to learn from.
So another thing that your father, Acharya Nikhil Ghosh, Padmabhushan Acharya Nikhil Ghosh ji, we see him as a banyan tree of Indian classical music, who have done a lot for Indian classical music to promote and to establish such an institution like Sangit Mahabharati in Bombay. And how did it come to his mind, if you could put some light on that thing? Because it's a no other
Sure.
thought of that, of at that time of doing an institution. Later, a lot of things came up like that, but he may be called the pioneer in thinking of, and a disciplined way, a syllabus and everything of learning, a very wonderful way of doing that. How did it come to his mind?
Well, actually, it happened this way, that he used to often be called as an examiner to various music institutions across the country.
Hmm.
And he felt there was immense talent in the country. But at the same time, they were not, most of them were not getting systematic guidance and systematic training. So he felt that, we were losing talents this way. And so something has to be done in that direction. So he felt the need of organizing the teaching method such that in our country we can bring about more number of talented performers or teachers or researchers. So with that in view, and also he was constantly followed up. There were students who were following up with him, who wanted to learn from him either vocal or tabla or whatever. So he used to teach in a very scattered manner, but that was for a short time. And then he felt no, he needs to organize things and call these students at a definite time. So the concept of class came in, and it started growing, growing, growing. And then he felt there should be additional good teachers. So he discussed with very good musicians, and many of them joined readily. Then a stage came where he felt, no, let us formalize the whole thing and draw up a curriculum. So he designed the curriculum himself, more or less entirely. Occasionally, in subjects like sitar and all, there were some old masters of the sitar at that time, including Vilayat Khan Sahab, who helped very much in organizing the sitar curriculum. And then vocal and tabla, of course, much of it was done by him. And this is how it started. And then, the various stages of formalizing an institution started, getting recognition, getting it registered, turning it into a public trust, so that, I mean, he felt that as a musician, he was so successful as a performer, but he felt this will go on, and this is going on in the life of almost every musician. But what are we giving back to society? What are we giving back to the country? And with that feeling, he established this institute, and which was later named as Sangit Mahabharati. And as years went by, the institution had a wonderful board of trustees, wonderful leaders in society who kind of were like guardian figures, and who helped organize things for the institution. And soon he had to look for a land where he could build up an institution, because till then the classes were running in our home or in other rented apartments and so on. So we, we finally got the land, and slowly, as funds started trickling in, he used to approach people for donations to help build up. So that takes time, because getting donations for a music institute, which you can't see anywhere. I mean, you people will think twice before coming forward with donations. So it takes time. However, it happened, and step by step, the institution was built up, and now it has been, what I think, about 44
6
years
decades.
since the building has come up, since we have this land and this the institute building, its own premises has come up. And number of students started swelling. We had he felt the need of teachers training. There were wonderful teachers who even came from traditional musicians families, but then he said, no, that won't do. You will have to undergo teachers training. You will have to learn how to teach and what to teach, both the manner and the matter. And so the teachers, coming from despite despite being talented musicians and coming from musicians families, they too had to undergo this training. And finally the ball started rolling, and wonderful students came out. That results started showing within 10-15 years. It was a very happy feeling when talented students started performing outside, you know, and bringing name to the prestige to the institution. Side by side, he felt the need of organizing information, musical information. So he felt by the way, I should go back a step. He felt the necessity of a more comprehensive system of notation.
Yeah.
If the existing systems of notation were more for vocal music. They are also, with the advancement of time and passage of years, he felt that more improvements, there was scope, and a notation system for instrumentation, for tabla, for sitar, for harmonium, for sarangi, for violin. There has to be, even the techniques must be, uh, one must be able to notate. So he brought out, he wrote a book that was very well acclaimed all around the world. It was known as The Fundamentals of Rag and Tal with a new system of notation.
Mm.
It worked very well, it had brought good results. And okay, now coming to that other information, he felt that when students or researchers or anybody, a seeker, when he wants to know something, he has to talk to so many musicians or musicologists. He has to go to so many libraries, study so many books. Why not get everything at one place, one stop? So the idea of encyclopedia came into his mind. And he felt, at least let me start writing on different technical terms, or, you know, um, on different points. And soon he approached other great musicologists living at that time, asked them to come and join. Slowly, there was support coming in from all sides, great scholars. At that time, Pandit Ratanjan Karji was there. So my father formed the editorial board under this trust, Sangit Mahabharati Trust, and uh, Dr. Ratanjan Karji, who was the greatest, most knowledgeable musicologist at that time, he he was heading the project, and other great scholars were part of the editorial board. After Dr. Tanjan Karji, Gurudev Gyan Prakash Ghosh became the head of the editorial board. Later, there was Thakur Jaidev Singh,
Jayadishri.
Dr. Premlata Sharma, all of these people joined in. And then great musicologists and sources of information, contributors. So a board of contributors was formed, and nearly 300 scholars from all over the country and around the world contributed by writing on subjects in which they specialized. So then he felt, again, there were controversies sometimes, one particular term, there might be two different or three different opinions, and there might be arguments. So a board of scrutinizers was formed. So an article written by one scholar was anonymously, without the name of the scholar, was given to another scholar who specialized in that. So to bring in his views, and that's how over 300 sources of information, they all joined hands. And my father's wish was that such a work should come out by a very reputed publisher like Oxford or Penguin or something like that. But unfortunately, he passed away in 1995, and the project was not completed. The last 30 years of his life, he worked incessantly. I've hardly seen him sleep. He was working round the day and night.
Uh,
He was in a rush. He knew time is running out. Great scholars were had become old, and they were dying one after the other. So the sources of information, before they get lost. So anyway, he passed away in 95, and it happened about 3 years after his demise that I received a phone call from the Oxford University Press in London, and they came to know about this project. I don't know how, but they said they were coming to India and they would like to meet us and see the work. And they visited, they saw all our research papers done so far, stacks and stacks of research typed papers and so on. And they felt They stayed on for 3 days, almost 6 to 8 hours each day, and examined many of our papers and said, your method of research is really foolproof. They said, who has drawn up this method of research? Because the whole idea of making a pro forma for each entry was my father's. I told them, well, this was his idea and so on. They said, it's phenomenal work already done. It has saved us a lot of effort, and we will be very happy to publish this. So they participated, and it was in 2011, exactly 50 years after the project started, that this was published. And
This
now
book
it
is
is
the
known as
music
the
of India. Music of India.
yes, it's known as the Oxford Encyclopedia of the Music of India. And if the listeners want to know what it might be containing, I'll give you a rough idea of the topics that it covers. It has a lot of information on ragas and talas both in Hindustani and Carnatic system also. Rag, tal, technical terms, history, biographies of great musicians, as many as possible with photographs of great musicians from the last 2, 3 centuries, paintings and photographs, illustrations, bibliography, then instruments, gharanas, um, other forms of music in the subcontinent, folk music, tribal music, religious music, spiritual music, popular music, Western music in India, and neighboring and music of the neighboring countries with whom we have had interactions. So we had to cover a little bit from Iran to Indonesia and from Tibet to Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So, so it's a very vast area that was covered. And then allied subjects, music, physics, acoustics, architecture, music and mathematics. And these have also been, touched upon in this encyclopedia.
Uh, That's a great mind, and he was probably one of the great administrator too, in a sense, what you have described, doing all these things. Definitely need to have a very administrative kind of a mind to do, to plan, and all these sort of things.
He was a self-made person because he often used to tell us he had studied in a small village school in East Bengal.
Hmm.
And he said, I don't know how God made me do all these things and, erect an institution, a building, and an organization, writing books, as an author, administration. These were not his cup of tea. Actually, he was a complete artist, but there was this other side to him that it was self-made.
There was certain kind of spiritualism in his, when I listen to any whatever videos that is there, there's a spiritualism in his way of he played the tabla. Whether maybe whether he saw music as a whole is like a very spiritual approach.
He was in private. He was a very deeply spiritual person, and in our uh, spirituality here in India, sometimes people take initiation from some great saint. Uh, so his spiritual guru was Swami Virajanand, who was the direct disciple of Swami Vivekanand. And he was very, very regular with his meditation and his japam, which he did twice a day, morning and evening, and without fail. He never missed a single day's meditation and japam. That helped him, I think, derive that tremendous mental strength to undertake all this work, all these great projects, to face so many difficulties and hardships, especially financial hardships for the projects to go on. So many times the projects came to a halt and he felt that the whole thing is going to collapse because there was no money to, to run the activity. The institution or the encyclopedia, paying very nominal amounts to honorariums to the great scholars who contributed and so on. It was very difficult. I mean, uh, uh, it's a little embarrassing for me. I feel the way he faced these difficulties were something that I don't think people of these days or our times can undertake so much of hardship.
Thank you, Nandada. Let's now come to Ishan. So, so my question to Ishan is like you are born and already born and brought up in a musical family, but you have studies and all those things to carry side by side. So a lot of people we see, we meet like young like you, they say, oh no, I am studying, it's so difficult to carry on with the music and all those things. What will be your suggestion to them? Because you were studying, you were playing the tabla, you were doing going concerts, going abroad everywhere and getting applause from all every corners of the society. And how do you manage, and what will be your suggestions to them?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for letting me be on this interactive session. First of all, and it's a great honor to be here. Coming to your question, I mean, honestly, I never thought of it at that point of time because there was no choice. Not that it was a pressure from anyone else, but it was the best feeling for me to play the tabla or to be surrounded with music since my infancy. So and the other part of it was that it was not never forced upon me as a rigid discipline. It was as natural as breathing, because I mean I would play practically all the time. When I didn't have anything else to do, I was just playing tabla all the time, whenever, as long as I was awake. So this is in my early childhood days, and even the training was very natural. It was a very subconscious kind of a process, because it was mainly by listening. Now that's something which is a little unusual, because since I was very young, I was continuously listening to, mainly to my father, of course, because he was there at home, and the entire atmosphere, as he said for himself in his childhood, it was pretty much the same for me. It was charged because of him being there at home, performing all the time, practicing, and me watching him teach, etc. But I was so intrigued by the whole process of how this music happens and how he particularly does this so amazingly, that I was hell bent on being with him all the time, be it at home, be it when he was performing or traveling, as much as I could at that age. So I would practically, at least when he was performing in Bombay, I would always make it a point to be there and sit with him on stage. That was around when I was 3 years old, or maybe even a little less.
Yeah, since the
So
age of three, he would sit on stage with me for entire durations of a concert. 1.5, 2 hours, 3 hours. He would sit with complete patience and listen to the entire musical happening.
so as I said, I mean, of course, it's the natural factor, that the gene element of the thing that comes into play, that factor. But also, it was just all these various different elements added up that made this, I mean, a huge passion for me. And as far as academics and all, I mean, if you talk about that, I followed the general procedure just as all kids do. I went to school, I had friends. Of course, I studied, though I didn't like to do it very much, but I guess I was good at it. So I did study. I was into sports. I spent a lot of time with friends. But I mean, music was my backbone. I mean, I mean, when you come home, you have to do music. That was the thing
Yeah.
for me. And that's what I wanted to do. It wasn't that I had to do it. So, even if you talk about, heavy studies and you have to give exams when you're in your secondary school and et cetera, a lot of other things come into play. But it was at that point of time, at that phase, it was like a breather for me because if I got say half an hour or 1 hour in between doing many other things, I would straight away go and practice. But
The other
before
thing,
that, this was much later. This was when I was in my teens. But when I was much younger and I didn't have other pressures, I was practically playing for about 8 or 10 hours every day. May not be together because I was very, very young, but if you add up the total, so per day I would be playing for those many hours. And I think that just, what do you say? It increased my love for this subject and for music tenfolds.
one thing I want to add here is that what gave me a lot of relief in his growing up, relief and confidence, was that of his own he chose to constantly in the spare time, besides when he would practice almost all the day, whenever he was tired, he would listen to recordings of the great masters, not only in tabla, Ahmed Thirakwa Khan Sahab and Amir Hussain Khan Sahab, Habibuddin Khan Sahab, my father,
Yeah.
but his likes, his taste was for, let's say, Amir Khan Sahab, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Vilayat Khan Sahab, Ravi Shankar ji. So that was Begum Akhtar. He was developing the right taste. And so I felt, good. That was kind of saving me a lot of effort because of his own. Normally, a guru tries to tell a student, okay, you should listen to so and so masters also. But I never had to tell him. I felt that he was developing the right taste. And not only Hindustani, great Hindustani musicians, Carnatic also, and good Western music, just like I had in my childhood. We always listened regularly to Beethoven and Mozart and Bach and all that, and he too developed that taste. So I was happy that he was on the right path.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Right.
So, Ishan, how do you feel when you see yourself? How lucky you are to see yourself, that when you see yourself as a part of this great lineage that you have, the people have, and how did it affect your music?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't feel more blessed and more fortunate and more privileged, of course, to be a part of and to be born in this family with such a great lineage, in which a family which has contributed immensely to our music in every generation, at least since the past three generations. So if you start from my granduncle, the pioneer of the bansuri, he was known as the father of Indian flute, Pannalal Ghosh ji. So starting from him, then my grandfather, of course, Pandit Nikhil Ghosh ji, then my father, Pandit Nayan Ghosh, and my late uncle Dhruva Ghosh, Pandit Dhruva Ghosh, and all of them, they in themselves are such institutions of music and such inspiration. Then, for a kid who's born in such a family, it's almost like he has heroes all around, you know. So, and of course, with him being around and with him especially giving so much time to me, which is really important, I feel, because for a performing musician, uh, they're they have so many things to do, so many engagements and a lot of things going on together. But then giving time to their students or their children, whatever it is, it's really, really important, and at the right time, in the formative years. So of course it was the talim. We did have the Guru Shishya Parampara talim as it is done traditionally, but it was more like there was music. Uh, uh, I don't know how to word this, but it was as if you have to feel music 24/7.
Yeah.
You either talk about music, you sing, you play, you learn, you listen,
Discuss.
you discuss. So and it's still happening till date. I mean, it's just the way the environment is at home, and I feel it is quite common among musician families. But that really helped me. The other thing was that my father made it a point that I got stage exposure with him, which I wouldn't call stage exposure. It was more like training on stage
Yeah.
since a very, very young age. So I was fortunate that I was playing on stage at an age when I didn't realize the magnanimity of the situation, or or how lucky I am, or that, all those things. So that kind of uh, helped me overcome things like stage fright and nervousness, because I never experienced those things because I was too young to feel those things. And it's that wonderful stage of your life when you think you are the best at what you're doing. you
He
know
was he was around 7 or 8 when he toured with me France and Switzerland and Spain. That was his first concert tour with me. And then from the age of 10, he started touring with me all around the world.
Great.
So that, in a way, I didn't see it also. I didn't see it as giving him early exposure. That was not the idea. Just for him to develop that stage confidence
Stage confidence, yes.
and the whole art of stagecraft. You know, so if it starts at that age, then by the time he really matures, he's in his mid 20s or late 20s. He's going to handle things in a much more matured manner. That was the whole idea.
Oh.
Yes, I think there was a huge boost. And also another very unique factor is that because of him uh, playing both the tabla and the sitar, of course, being a master of both, I could actually learn the art of accompaniment, which is a very unusual thing. Normally it's very hard to learn to accompany. You develop your art of accompaniment through exposure, or through experience. I'm sorry. It takes several years, as all of you know. I mean, I'm no one to make these statements, but it takes several years to keep on accompanying various forms of instruments, music, artists, etc. And then you finally come to a point where you can kind of be the ideal accompanist in whatever way. But the effort for me was, much less, because of him uh, taking me along in his sitar concerts, and giving me that those little tips here and there, those discussions before a concert, after a concert, or even on stage, of what to do when, because it's a very of course, because the whole music is improvised, but when you accompany, it's all in the moment. So it's about what you do in the moment, and what you don't, not necessarily what you learn. So all of that put together, the effort was much less for me, because of the time and the energy and the opportunities that he.
Yeah, great. Also, I heard that President of USA, Jimmy Carter, invited both of you to play for the Habitat for Humanity concert there. How was the experience, Ishaan? Because you got a chance to play in the front of such a great person, for a great personality. Maybe
It was definitely one of
Nayan Dada already has performed in so many big luminaries. So my question is to you.
Yeah, I mean, before that, playing each time when I perform with him, it's a very special experience, of course. But this time it was one of the most memorable occasions, of course, because performing in front of such a illustrious man, it was a very, very big opportunity. And what was really special for me, more than the concert, was to meet him and to learn how simple and how innocently um, modest such a great man can be, who's reached such great heights. But it was really a big learning experience to spend those few hours with President Carter, and it was really memorable.
Yeah, the organizers actually were afraid because he had just recovered from his bout of cancer, and he had just jumped back to normalcy. And considering his health and age. He was 92 then, I think 92, around 92 at that time. And so they felt the concert should be very kind of slick, and maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever. We understood, and we gave a very short performance with everything in it, kind of. So there was my sitar recital, a little bit of alap, a little bit of gat, and then giving space for his tabla solos also, so that the president got a kind of a complete glimpse of the whole thing. But when we finished, he had Jimmy Carter had a look of kind of surprise that why it finished so soon. So he just stood up and he said, "Is it over?" I said, "Well, whatever you like." He said, "No, just go on." He said, "I'm enjoying it." He said. So we played for an hour. And he enjoyed it so much. And it was a very special experience. We had dinner together, we chatted together. And it was actually a fundraiser program for his Habitat for Humanity project. So there were many other eminent people, all Americans, of course, uh, who had gathered there. Probably they were all benefactors or whatever, supporters or donors for his project. And so it was quite a great experience for us, I'll say, and interacting with him and seeing him as such a natural person. He came close after we finished. He wanted to take a close look at the instruments, and he took the sitar in his hand and he wanted to feel its weight. He wanted to feel that the whole instrument. He strum string, then he patted a little bit on the tabla. He wanted to see how the sound comes out and was wondering how do you get that long sustained sound. I just explained to him about the circular black patch on the tabla, which gives that sustain. And he took keen interest in the whole thing. And then he just turned to Ishaan and said, "You must be hungry. Let's go to eat," he said. Like a friend, It was almost like a grandpa and a grandson talking. That kind of affection.
And coming to Newton and Nikhil Ghosh was a great composer. He composed a lot of compositions. We have heard that he had made a lot of composition, and he composed for films also, like Parinita, Sangsar, where and lot of the Lata Mangeshkar ji, Asha Bhosle ji, Manna De ji, all performed. So
Yeah.
put some light on that.
Yeah, he was. See, he was. Let me say it this way: he was born in the eastern Bengal, East Bengal, which is today Bangladesh.
Hmm.
Then it was around the age of 18 or 20 that he moved to Calcutta, and along with his older brother, who had already established there, and was Pannalal Ghosh was already working with new theaters there.
Hmm.
But very soon, Pannalal Ghosh left for Bombay. At that time, the Bollywood in Bombay was known as Bombay Talkies, and 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 the sound of the flute and his playing took the film industry by storm. They never had that. They never heard that kind of a sound before. So he became very active in the film industry as a performer and a composer, Pannalal Ghosh. Very soon, my father felt, what's the point in staying back in Kolkata? He too shifted to Bombay, and while his main idea was to look for a great guru, whom he found very soon after coming to Bombay, was Ustad Amir Hussain Khan. So his talim intensity was great, and he, being a bachelor at that time, he cared two hoots for anything else in the world. He just practiced 14 to 15 to 16 hours a day. He had nothing, no other responsibility. So he felt he didn't have a family to look after. So, you know, he felt this is the best time to, build myself. Side by side, he started, for a livelihood, besides little concerts here and there, and with his friends, his classical concerts with Ravi Shankarji, Vilayat Khan Sahab also started very early. But he he was noticed also for his tabla by the Bombay film industry. And then they discovered that, oh, he was very good at music, singing, and even composing. And soon he got assignments for films, and not just films. Some of his music have also been very, very evergreen and popular till today. Even non-film recordings, many of them sung by some of the legends, like not only Lata Mangeshkar and Asha Bhosle, but Geeta Dutt, Hemant Kumar, Manna De. And in same thing, he kept often going back to Kolkata, because his talim with Gyan Babu was also continuing side by side. So his visits to Calcutta, Sandhya Mukherjee singing his songs, Nirmala Mishra, Krishna Das Gupta, Manavendra Mukherjee, and all these great legends singing his compositions. Many of them, luckily, are stored in the Kolkata All India Radio archives. They have them, and they often play it in what they call it Romeo Giti, I think, Romeo Giti, I think. In that series, they play it even today. And well, some of those non-film recordings are so popular even today on this channel, special channel for light music called Vivid Bharati. It often comes, Hole Hole Hawaye Dole, Jamuna ke Teer Kanha Aao, Ambua ke Dari Bole. All these songs by Geeta Dutt, Asha Bhosle, they are played even today. In the meantime, he was a wonderful composer for even non-light music. I mean, there were other, music with folk elements. He had a huge repertoire of folk music also with him. Baul, Bhatiyali, and folk songs of Uttar Pradesh, of Hyderabad, and so on. So he taught that to his students and to us.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So that was with regard to the another thing. I when you talked about composing, yeah, I should tell you this. The Vande Mataram, national song of India, not the national anthem, not the national song. The first two stanzas were composed in Miyaki Malhar by Pannalal Ghosh, and then his sudden demise at a very young age. He was just 48 when he passed away. And the rest of the song remained uncomposed, untuned. And my father completed that, especially because the writer of the song, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, had made a footnote when he wrote the song that he would like it in one of the Malhars. And so this was done in Miyaki Malhar, in a very spirited tune where it goes with tabla and pakhawaj at the same time. So it arouses the patriotic feeling in you. So that was the tune. He said he tuned the entire song later, and it's remarkable, the tune of this song.
Nanuda, can I take the permission to please, if you can sing the little bit of tune that we can we hear from you the tune?
Yeah, just a line. I'll say sa pa sa sa da then Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam Sufalam Malayaj Shitalam Shasamalam Mataram Mataram Vande Mataram Vande Mataram शुभ्रजोत्सना पुलकितयामिनीं फुल्लकुसुमित द्रुमदलशोभिनीं सुहासिनीं सुमधुरभाषिणीं सुखदां वरदां मातरं मातरं वन्दे मातरं. This much was done by
very,
Pannalal
very.
Ghosh. Then father made continued it. Din din da, din din da da, din din da, din din da da, din din da. त्रिंशकोटि कंठ कल कल निनाद कराले द्वित्रिंशकोटि भुजधृत कर कर बाले अबला কেন মা এত বলে বহুবল ধারিণী নমামি তারিণী রিপুদল ভারিণী মাতরম मातरम वंदे मातरम वंदे मातरम. तुमी विद्या तुमी धर्म तुमी हृदय तुमी मर्म तुमी विद्या तुमी धर्म तुमी हृदय तुमी मर्म त्वं हि प्राणा शरीरे बाहुते तुमी मा भक्ति बाहुते तुमी मा शक्ति हृदये तुमी मा भक्ति बाहुते तुमी मा शक्ति हृदये तुमी मा भक्ति तुम्हारी प्रतिमा गढ़ी मंदिरे मंदिरे त्वं हि दुर्गा दश प्रहरण धारिणी कमला कमलदल विहारिणी त्वं हि दुर्गा दश प्रहरण धारिणी कमला कमलदल विहारिणी वाणी विद्यादायिनी नमामि त्वां नमामि कमलां अमलां अतुलां सुजलां सुफलां मातरं मातरं श्यामलां सरलां सुस्मितां भूषितां श्यामलां सरलां सुस्मितां भूषितां धरणीं भरणीं मातरं मातरम vande. And you know, with the tabla and pakhawaj going in what and you know, 8 tanpuras and 100 voices. We had the Sangit Mahabharati choir, 100 voice choir, and it used to sing. People used to get goosebumps, you know.
Goosebumps.
And yeah.
Mere the tune is having me have these goosebumps. How it sound, it's so melodic at the same time, so rhythmic and also so patriotic. So culmination of all the three aspects there. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you, Nayan Dada. Thank you, Nayan Dada and Ishaan Bhai, for being here today. And we are really proud. It was a wonderful session with so much of thing to learn from you.
Thank you.
So
I owe a lot to also many other great musicians who gave me opportunities to perform with them, and I learned a lot. So my gratitude goes to people like Pandit Ravi Shankar, whom I was able to accompany a few times, Ustad Vilayat Khan Sahab, Nikhil Banerjee, you know, among the great Halim Jafar Khan Sahab, Rais Khan, all the great Sitar and Sarod players, Buddha Devdas Gupta ji, who was also my guru, and I learned quite many rare ragas and rare bandishes, sarod and sitar bandishes from him. And for me to accompany so many great stalwarts like, you know, Ustad Latafat Hussain Khan Sahab, Yunus Hussain Khan Sahab, Pandit Jasraj ji, among the seniors I'm talking about, you know, Girja Devi ji. So these were great experiences I got to perform with many, many, many musicians besides my contemporaries. So this itself, accompanying these grand masters, itself is a learning experience. So in my growth, I give credit to all of these great musicians also.
Thank you so much. Actually, we feel blessed. We at Suromurchhana blessed that we could have you, and your views on music and your story is amazing. And these will be great learning experience for the students who will be listening to this, the listening from Ishan and everything. So it's wonderful, wonderful. And thank you again
Thank
to
you.
Dada and Ishan Bhai for
Thank you
being
so much.
here and giving your precious time for us and also playing for the festival. It's a great, great honor for us, and that was the
Thank you very much.
best possible way to pay my homage and your homage to my Guruji. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Kananji and Malavika Pishi, Malavika Kananji, get we seek their blessings.
Thank you. Thank you so much.